Mr. Ryder was going to give a ball. There were several reasons why this was an opportune time for such an event. Mr. Ryder might aptly be called the Dean of the Blue Veins. The original Blue Veins were a little society of colored persons, organized in a certain northern city shortly after the war. Its purpose was to establish and maintain correct social standards among a people whose social condition presented almost unlimited room for improvement. By accident, combined perhaps by some natural affinity, the society of individuals who were generally speaking more white than black. Some envious outsider made the suggestion that no one was eligible for membership who was not white enough to show blue veins. Most of their members were lightly colored. It was because such persons, as a rule, had better opportunities to qualify themselves for membership. He had not been among the founders of the society, but had come in some years later. His genius for social leadership was such that he had speedily become its recognized advisor and head, the custodian of its standards and the preserver of its traditions. While he was not as white as some of the Blue Veins, his appearance was such as to confer distinction upon them. His features were that of a refined type. His hair was almost straight. He was always neatly dressed. His manners were irreproachable, and his morals above suspicion. Poetry was his passion. He could repeat whole pages of the great English poets, and if his pronunciation was sometimes faulty, his eye, his voice, his gestures would respond to the changing sentiment with a precision that revealed a poetic soul and disarmed criticism. He owned and occupied a very comfortable house on a respectable street. He generally shared his house with some young people who looked after his wants and were company for him, for Mr. Ryder was a single man. Miss Molly Dixon visited Groveland. Had any woman ever made him wish to change his condition to that of a married man? Miss Dixon had come to Groveland from Washington in the spring, and before the summer was over she had won Mr. Ryder's heart. She was much younger than he, in fact. He was old enough to have been her father, though no one knew exactly how old he was. She was whiter than he, and better educated. She was visiting friends in Groveland, and finding the town and the people to her liking, had prolonged her stay indefinitely. She had not seemed displeased at Mr. Ryder's attentions, but on the contrary had given him every proper encouragement. But he had made up his mind, and had only to determine the time when he would ask her to be his wife. He decided to give a ball in her honor, and at some time during the evening of the ball to offer her his heart and hand. His ball must be worthy of the lady in whose honor it was to be given, and must, by the quality of its guests, set an example for the future. I have no race prejudice, he would say, but we people of mixed blood are ground between the upper and the nether millstone. Our fate lies between absorption in the white race and extinction in the black. By its exclusiveness to counteract leveling tendencies, and his marriage with Miss Dixon would help to further the upward progress of absorption he had been wishing and waiting for. The ball was to take place on Friday night. The house had been put in order. Mr. Ryder sat on his front porch, which the shade of a vine running up over a wire netting made a cool, pleasant lounging place. He expected to respond to the toast, the ladies at the supper. So he ran over the leaves until his eye rested on the description of Queen Guinevere.
She seemed a part of joyous spring, a gown of grass green silk she wore, buckled with golden clasp before, a light green tuft of plumes she wore, closed in a golden ring. She looked so lovely as she swayed, the rein with dainty fingertips. A man had given all other bliss, and all his worldly worth for this, to waste his whole heart in one kiss upon her perfect lips.
As Mr. Ryder murmured these words audibly, with an appreciative thrill, he heard the latch of his gate click, and a light footfall sounding on the steps. He turned his head, and and saw a woman standing before his door. She seemed quite old, for her face was crossed and recrossed with 100 wrinkles, and around the edges of her bonnet could be seen protruding here, there, and there a tuft of short gray wool. She was very black, so black that her toothless gums revealed, when she opened her mouth to speak, were not red but blue.
Good afternoon, madam.
Good evening, sir. Is this here with Mr. Ruben Lipson?
Yes, I am Mr. Ryder. Did you want to see me?
Yes, sir. If I didn't disturb you too much.
Not at all. Have a seat over here behind the vine where it's cool. What can I do you for?
Excuse me, sir. Excuse me, sir. I was looking for my husband. I heard you was a big man and lived here a long time. I Lord, you wouldn't mind if I come around and ask you, heard a Merlighter man named Sam Taylor going around church these Ermongs, these people for his wife Lisa Jane?
There used to be many such cases right after the war, but it's been so long that I've forgotten them. There are very few now. Tell me your story.
My name Lisa Jane. When I was young, I used to belong to Morris Ball Smith down in Old Missouri. I was bad down there. When I was a guy, I was married to a man named Jim, but Jim died, and after that, I married a Merlighter man named Sam Taylor. Sam was freeborn, but his mommy and daddy died, and the white folks pranced him to Marster for work till I'm telling you, he growed up. I was a cook. One day, Mary Ann, old Miss May, came rushing out her kitchen. She says, "Lisa Jane, old Miss going to sail down Sam the River. Go away half a year. My husband's free. Don't make no difference." I heard old Marsh tell old Miss he was going to take Sam Wynn down way weird. I'm there tomorrow, before he needed money. And you know what, her get it to $6 for Sam and no questions asked. When Sam came home after the field at night, I told him old Marsh going to steal him. Then the war broke out. When it was over, the colored folks were scattered. I went back to the old home, but Sam wasn't there, and I couldn't find him or nothing. But I know he'd be there to look for me, and hadn't found me and had gone nowhere to hunt for me. Osby's looking for him ever since. I know he's been looking for me, for he have slept too. I know he's been hunting for me all these years, lesson he's been sicker than something. So he couldn't work out of his head, so he couldn't remember my promise. I went back down the river, for I know he had gone down there looking for me. Osby is in New Orleans, Atlanta, and Charleston, Richmond, and well, I've been all over the South, so I come to the North. For I knows I'll finna find him some of these days, where he'll find me, then we'll both be happy in freedom, and we will both be happy as before we did war.
How have you lived all these years?
Cooking, sir. I was a good cook. Do you know anybody with a needs a good cook? I was stopping with a colored family around the corner. I tell you, it's a good place.
Do you really expect to find your husband? He may be dead long ago.
Oh no, he ain't dead. The signs and tokens telling me. I jumped 3 nights ago running on this last week. I found him.
He may have married another woman. Your slave marriage would not have prevented him, but you never lived with him after the war. And without that, your marriage doesn't count.
It wouldn't make no difference with Sam. He wouldn't marry no other woman until I found him. I knows him. Some tell me all these years that I'll go and find Sam before I die.
Perhaps he's outgrown you and climbed up in the world where he wouldn't care if you had to find him.
No, indeed, sir. Sam ain't that kind of man. He was gooder to me.
You may have passed him on the street 100 times during the 25 years and not have known him. Time works great changes.
I know. I'm amongst 100 men, for they wasn't no Merlighter like my man Sam. I couldn't be mistook. I told her this picture around with me 25 years.
May I see it? It might help me to remember whether I have seen the original. I don't know of any man in town who goes by that name, nor have I heard of anyone making such inquiries. But if you'll leave me your address, I will give the matter some attention and find out anything, and I'll let you know.
It's the ball, and Mr. Ryder is addressing the crowd.
But perhaps the quality which most distinguishes the woman is her fidelity and the devotion to those she loves. History is full of examples, but has recorded none more striking than the one which only today came under my notice. Suppose, too, that this man has made his way to North, as some of us have done, and there, where larger opportunities had improved him, and had in the course of all these years grown to be as different from the ignorant boy who ran away from fear of slavery as the day is from the night. And then suppose that accident should bring to his knowledge the fact that the wife of his youth, the wife he had left behind, not one who had walked by his side and kept pace with him in his upward struggle, but one upon whom advancing years and laborious life had set their mark, was alive and seeking them. But that he was absolutely safe from recognition or discovery, unless he chose to reveal himself. And now, ladies and gentlemen, friends and companions, I ask you, what should he have done?
He should have acknowledged her.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the woman, and I am the man whose story I have told you. Permit me to introduce you to the wife of my youth.